caught my toxic mom badmouthing my marriage and job behind my back. So I uninvited her from my baby shower, but now she's playing the victim and spreading lies about me. So like 3 days ago, I had my baby shower and my mom showed up even though I didn't invite her. I'll tell you why she wasn't invited. She's just crazy. There's no nicer way to say it. That's just how it is and has been for a while. I think it all started when she and my dad got divorced, and he started dating his coworker 2 years later. I'm 26, my mom is 49, and my dad is 52. His girlfriend, Sally, is 38. I know it might seem like my dad and Sally are the bad guys here, but they're actually the good ones. My mom just hates them because she thinks my dad was cheating and emotionally involved with Sally before the divorce, which is totally not true. Honestly, I don't even get why she was so upset after the divorce since she was the one who started it. My parents always had a rocky marriage. I never saw them happy together even when I was a kid, and when they got divorced 7 years ago, I was actually relieved. I thought that finally, both of them would have a chance to move forward and be happy. It was pretty clear to me growing up that they might have been in love at some point. I can't deny that, but they definitely weren't anymore. My mom was especially tough to live with because some days she'd be in a great mood, all sunshine and roses, but on her bad days, she'd turn into a raging monster and look for any excuse to get mad at someone. Most of the time, it was my dad she'd start yelling at over the tiniest, most insignificant things. She usually tried not to scream at me if she could help it, because I stayed out of her way, and she knew that if she started yelling at me, I wouldn't hold back either because I was just as outspoken and loud as she was. And whenever we did end up fighting, I always kept screaming and yelling right back at her until she gave up, so she kind of knew better than to mess with me. And that's me as a teenager, so you can only imagine how bad it must have been if she tried to pick a fight with me as an adult. That's why all her anger and frustration ended up getting taken out on my dad. He'd put up with it for a long time, and even though he would fight back occasionally, he would mostly just ignore it and try to get on with his day whenever she had her little rage outbursts. He knew that she would go back to normal in a day or two and apologize to him, so he never bothered to get mad. Both of us were familiar with the pattern that my mom followed and weren't really bothered whenever she would start screaming about something. I would usually stay out of this and would only talk to my dad when the fight was done, or rather when my mom was done screaming at him. It was a tough time for all of us, but then out of nowhere, one day, my dad called me up when I was in college, and he told me that my mom had filed for a divorce because she was not happy with him anymore. And after I had left for college, she had realized that all these years, she had only been with him because of me. But now that I was gone, the glue holding the family together was gone, and I was grown up, so she did not feel the need to stick with him in an unhappy marriage anymore. I remember telling him that I was thankful that was happening, and even he sounded pretty relieved that day. The divorce was an amicable one, and they wrapped things up pretty quickly. I was happy that they were separated now, even though it meant that it would be super awkward for them to be in the same room after that. I did keep in touch with my mom because she was mostly cool, except when it came to stuff about my dad. I guess you could say things were complicated with her, but I never thought about cutting her off or anything like that because that would be way too harsh. She showed up for all my birthdays after they split, even though it was kinda awkward for her, especially with my dad in the same room, especially after he started dating Sally. The two of them also came to my wedding, and for my sake, my mom would keep quiet during the ceremony, but as soon as we were alone, she'd start going off about how much she hated Sally. She was convinced that my dad had been emotionally involved with her before they got divorced, since Sally had been a long-time friend of his. But I can tell you guys that it was not possible because I know my dad, and he would never cheat. Even though he was miserable in the marriage, I know for a fact that he would never do that to my mom, or anybody else for that matter. Plus, he and Sally didn't start dating until 2 whole years after the divorce. If they had really been cheating, they probably wouldn't have waited that long. Anyway, my point is that my mom was wrong about what she believed, but no matter how much I tried to convince her, she just wouldn't listen and would tell me that I didn't know anything. That was pretty frustrating, but I understood she was upset, and I didn't let it get to me. She basically thought my dad had traded her in for a younger model, even though Sally was just younger, but not exactly young. Even though she was in her late 30s, I don't think that counts as young, to be honest. She would totally ignore my dad and Sally every time they had to meet and make snide remarks about her to me in private. I didn't think that was cool because honestly, Sally was a really nice person. She and I had always gotten along great, and I guess that's what bugged my mom about it, because she couldn't stand the fact that I liked her. I'd done my best to keep the peace between them, and so far, I've managed to have a good relationship with both my parents. I've been married for almost 2 years now, and at the start of the year, my husband and I found out I was pregnant. We were over the moon, and we even threw a party to share our big news. Both my parents were thrilled for me and have been super supportive so far. But about 2 weeks ago, I was visiting my mom because my aunt had come over and I wanted to see her. She lives in London and only visits us once a year, so I figured I'd drop by and we were all hanging out and having a good time. But at one point, I had to get up and leave because I needed to use the restroom, and since I'm pregnant and pretty huge right now, it took me a full 6 minutes to get up, do my thing, and then come back. It used to take me 3 minutes, but any pregnant woman can relate to the struggle. I had left my phone in the room and had accidentally started recording before I left. I had been snapping photos of myself, wearing a necklace that my mom had said I could borrow just to see how it looked. And after that, I left the room, so maybe that's how I accidentally ended up recording. But when I came back, I stopped the recording but forgot to delete the video. It wasn't until I got back home that I remembered it and I was about to delete it, but I figured I might as well play it, just for kicks. I didn't expect anything crazy, but boy was there a surprise waiting for me. My phone started recording when I set it down on the couch where I was sitting, so you can't see any faces and the video just shows the ceiling. But luckily, my microphone is pretty good and picked up the whole conversation between my mom and my aunt while I was out of the room. As soon as I was out of earshot, my aunt made a comment about how big I was and asked my mom how many months along I was. She told her I was 7 months along, and my aunt said she didn't expect me to be this big and almost thought I was close to my delivery date. It wasn't a genuine conversation, and there wasn't even a hint of concern in their voices. I knew my aunt was making fun of me, and it was a huge shock when my mom joined in because she knew I was pretty insecure about gaining weight and getting bigger during the pregnancy, and she had been telling me it was no big deal. But behind my back, while talking to my aunt, she started joking about how she thought I was going to give birth to triplets because of how fat I was now. Then, she started making even worse comments about me, saying she hoped the baby didn't get my face or my nose, and suggested that I start saving up for a nose job because that would be pretty necessary in the future. They started making fun of all my insecurities and were really laughing it up behind my back. And then they started to talk about my dad and Sally. My aunt was the one who asked her how that was going, and my mom started telling her about how annoyed she was that I always seemed to suck up to Sally like I was her minion, and called me one of my dad's cronies. Then my aunt started guessing that maybe I was kissing up to my dad and Sally because I wanted them to invest in my business, which is so wrong because I had already shown them my business plan and they liked it. I didn't need to kiss up to them. They liked me for who I was, and they believed in me, which is why they were investing, not because of any other reason. I expected my mom to jump in and stick up for me at some point, but they just kept going on and on until I came back. So not only were they making fun of my looks, they were also doubting my talent, and I couldn't stand it. I wasn't that upset about my aunt saying these things because I knew that she was a shallow gossip, but I was just very disappointed that my mom was joining in on this, especially after I had tried to pretend that she was a good person all my life, even though everybody else seemed to dislike her. I had made up excuses for her all my life, but that one video just ruined everything. After that video, I was really mad. I had always tried to defend my mom, but that video proved everybody else right and showed me just how wrong I was for trying to keep in touch with that woman. The only reason I had been trying to have a good relationship with her was because at the end of the day, no matter how she was as a person, she was still my mom. But after that, I decided to cut her off and I didn't even send her an invite to my baby shower. I also told everybody else who was invited to make sure that they did not breathe a word of this to her, but somehow she found out. I guess it must have been somebody who didn't understand how serious the situation was and decided to be loose-lipped around her. So on the day of my baby shower, a couple of days ago, after everybody had arrived and we were having a great time playing games, she decided to storm into the venue and demand an explanation as to why she had not been invited. I knew she was totally loving the chance to stir up drama and make herself the center of attention because that's just her thing. But I wasn't about to let her get under my skin, so I decided to stay calm, and instead of shouting or arguing with her, I just played the video on my phone. I cranked up the volume and stood up so everyone at the party could see what was happening. Everyone went silent, and there wasn't much to actually see in the video. It was all about the audio, so everyone was just stunned at what they were hearing. I know nobody really expected much from my mom, but even so, this was a shock. After I played the video, I just stayed quiet and waited for her to say something because she was the one who barged in here trying to cause a scene. I thought maybe she'd start apologizing or at least try to defend herself. But to my surprise, she did the opposite and started yelling at me, accusing me of invading her privacy and saying she was going to call the cops on me and sue me for what I did. I was too shocked to say anything because I couldn't even figure out how she got to that point, and thankfully my husband stepped in at that moment, and he told her to leave or he'd have no choice but to call the cops, and unlike her, we actually had a good reason to do that since she crashed a party she wasn't even invited to. Anyway, after she got threatened with the cops, she finally left, but not before she told me I'd have to pay for this, since I embarrassed her and she wasn't going to let it slide. My dad and Sally were also really upset by the things my mom said, and right now, nobody from the family is talking to her. Not even people from her own family, since some of my relatives from my mom's side were at the baby shower and they heard everything. They spread the word, so now everyone on her side of the family knows what she said, and they're not talking to her. She's blaming me for all of it and says she's going to sue me for invading her privacy without her consent. Can you believe she's mad at me for playing a recording of my mom talking trash about me at my baby shower? Update 1, hey, thanks so much for supporting me and helping me see that I had nothing to feel guilty about. I also don't have anything to be scared of because obviously my mother doesn't have a case against me. It's not a crime to accidentally record someone on my phone, and it's not like I'm using it for anything illegal, so it doesn't matter. At least in our state, I don't think I'm going to get into any trouble for this, and I'm sure that no self-respecting lawyer is even going to take this case for my mother unless they're offered a huge amount of money, which I'd love to see happen, since my mother doesn't have that kind of cash either. And even if she somehow found a lawyer, I can't imagine any judge bothering with such a ridiculous case. That's just my opinion. I don't really know what's going to happen. But I know that she can't contact me after this. I've blocked her, and now she can go on talking about how I invaded her privacy, but it's not going to affect me. I don't think it's going to affect anyone else either because everyone is on my side here. The things she said were really mean, and I can't imagine any other mom saying those things about their own daughter. My family has been great to me. They've been checking in on how I'm doing and are trying their best to be there for me, which I really appreciate. So far, things have been good, even after the mess at the baby shower. I just wish whoever in my family blabbed to my mom about the event would own up to it so I could tell them how disappointed I am. They totally ruined a really special moment for me. Update 2, hey guys. So there's been a new twist here, and I've heard from a few people that my mom's been spreading total lies about me behind my back. She's trying to cover up the awful things she said that I caught on camera and then showed to the family. She probably figured out that going the lawyer route wasn't going to fly, so she's resorted to this. And since I've blocked her, she can't bug me in person anymore, so she's going around badmouthing me to everyone else. She's been telling people that the reason she was upset with me, the day I caught her talking behind my back, is because I'm fake and only nice to her face. She says I never try to be there for her when she really needs me. She made up this story about needing money a couple of months ago because she was stuck at a restaurant and her card wasn't working. She called me and even promised to pay me back as soon as she could, but she just needed me to bail her out right then. Apparently, I just said no, told her I wasn't comfortable doing it, and then hung up. This literally never happened, and even if it had, I still wouldn't be cool with her talking behind my back. Anyway, she's been telling people this story, and then she said that, even after that incident, she tried to confront me and talk things out, but I was just extra nice and sweet to her, saying I didn't mean to hurt her feelings. But she could tell I was being insincere and fake. She had a ton of issues with me, but she didn't want to stress me out about them because I was pregnant, so she kept quiet and only spilled the beans when she was chatting with my aunt. None of this ever happened, and this whole thing is totally made up, and honestly, I can't say I'm surprised coming from my mom. My relatives who have been filling me in on the lies she's been spreading want me to confront her, but I'm just not up for it. I'm super pregnant right now and everything feels exhausting, so this is the last thing I need. My husband also thinks I should confront her and put an end to it, but I honestly don't know if it's even worth it because it'll just lead to another fight, and we're not even talking anymore, so what's the point? I just want to live peacefully and not deal with any drama. I seriously don't think that's too much to ask for. Update 3, hey, so it's been almost a month since my baby shower, and from what I hear, my mom is still trying to save face and telling people what a terrible daughter I am, which is why she was badmouthing me. But this isn't about that. It's about a guest I invited who then went and talked to my mom about it, despite my very clear instructions not to. It's actually pretty shocking who it turned out to be because the one who blabbed was my dad. Yeah, I couldn't even believe it when he confessed to me a couple of days ago and said it had been weighing on his conscience for weeks, so he felt he had to tell me. I was so shocked that I didn't even scold him. I just wanted to know why he would do that. I didn't explain the real reason why I didn't want anyone talking about the event to my mom, because I didn't want to stir up any drama, but I thought my instructions were clear enough. I knew people would be curious about why I didn't want my mom at the party, but I planned on telling everybody in person instead of leaving a paper trail and mentioning anything about what had happened between my mom and me in the email. But apparently my dad couldn't understand why I hadn't invited my mom, and he even asked me and my husband about it, but we were really busy, so we didn't get back to him in time. We just told him we'd discuss it with him later, but then we totally forgot about it. He couldn't wait, so he decided to take a leap of faith and forwarded the email to my mom and asked her what was going on. In the invitation itself, I had mentioned that I didn't want this to reach my mom under any circumstances, and I wanted everybody to keep quiet about it and not mention this to my mom because I didn't want her at the baby shower. So that's how my mom found out and ended up showing up at the party, all thanks to my dad. He apologized to me like crazy for it, and I think I'm okay with it now. But I'm glad he didn't tell me about any of this a couple of weeks ago because back then, I was furious, and I definitely would have yelled at him if he had told me just a few weeks ago. Anyway, he's told me he's really sorry about what he did, and he told me he just hadn't been thinking things through. He should have known there was a good reason why I didn't want my mom there, and I would have told people eventually anyway since they deserved an explanation. He should have just trusted me instead of going rogue, but I forgave him after he owned up to his mistake and said sorry. Hey, it's been almost 6 months since my baby shower and I'm still going on about that drama. Anyway, here's the scoop. So a couple of weeks back, my mom sent out invites to her birthday bash that was supposed to happen this week. My husband and I obviously didn't get one, which we're cool with since we're swamped being new parents, and honestly, I'm not looking to reconnect with her anyway. I heard from the rest of the family that she sent out the invites, but I had no clue that literally nobody from our family RSVP'd yes. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. Not a single person. That's gotta hurt. And it did because my mom was pretty upset about it, and the day before the party, she showed up at my place. I didn't let her in once I realized it was her, and I told her that whatever she had to say, she could say it from outside because honestly, I didn't trust her. Plus, more importantly, I had my baby sleeping in the other room. I didn't want her coming in and getting anywhere near my son. She told me I was disrespecting her, and I told her, yeah, I was, and I didn't even feel bad about it, especially after all the crap she's been saying about me to others and how she's been treating me these past few months. I think it all boiled over that day, and I let her have it, telling her exactly what I thought of her. I guess I just needed some closure because I've been keeping my distance, so I never got the chance to clap back at everything she's been doing. But that day, when she showed up at my house, I couldn't hold back. I told my husband to take our son into the nursery and keep him there until my mom left. So I started telling my mom how much she'd hurt me. Even though I was always there for her and tried to keep our relationship going, she didn't seem to appreciate it at all. She thought it was fine to talk trash about me behind my back and then try to justify it with made-up stories. I didn't even notice when it happened, but I was screaming at her, and she was just standing there quietly on the other side of the door, listening to me yell. When I finished, she just said she got where I was coming from and promised not to bother me again. But then she asked me to talk to her family and tell them she wasn't the bad guy, so they'd stop treating her like she was contagious. She mentioned that no one had come to her birthday party, and it really upset her, so she wanted me to smooth things over with her family. That was just ridiculous. After everything she's done, I don't think she has any right to ask me for anything, especially something like that. I told her I didn't owe her anything and wasn't going to do what she asked. I reminded her that she didn't even congratulate me or show up when my son was born, so as far as I'm concerned, we don't have a relationship anymore. And since I don't see her as my mom anymore, I don't feel the need to do anything for her or worry about her feelings. She never cared about mine or anyone else's, so why should she expect everyone else to care about hers? That's just the height of entitlement. She tried to argue a bit more, but I told her to leave because it was late, and I'd already decided I wasn't going to help her. So she left, but not before calling me a few choice names. So she ended up canceling her birthday party and just went out to dinner with a few friends, from what I heard. I haven't told my family to do anything. I haven't even told them not to talk to her like she thinks. I don't have any sort of control or sway over these folks, but they're good people, which is why they're steering clear of her. When she came to meet me the other day, she didn't apologize for anything. She just said she gets where I'm coming from. Like, what's that supposed to mean? She can get where I'm coming from but can't say sorry. If her ego is that huge, she should be able to handle a few relatives skipping her birthday party, especially since she's a grown woman with a grown daughter and not some high school kid. At least my husband and I are happy with our lives and too busy to worry about any of this. All our focus is on raising our son now.